By 1944, the map of Western Europe belonged to Adolf Hitler. The Netherlands, Belgium, and France had all fallen. The Nazi war machine had consumed the continent. The United States, Britain, and Canada had been pushed entirely off the mainland. They were entirely locked out of the continent, facing a strategic stalemate that left them isolated in the UK. For 2 years, military planners worked in secret. They designed the largest amphibious invasion in human history, an intricate operation called Overlord. This single thrust consumed every resource the Allies had left. If these coastal defenses held, there would be no second attempt. The war in Europe would be lost. Sailing directly into the teeth of the German guns was suicide. Planners knew the only way to survive the Channel crossing was to blind the enemy first. Allied intelligence constructed a massive phantom military force out of thin air, placing it under the command of one of their most famous leaders, General George Patton. They broadcast fake radio traffic into the ether. They even staged entire fields with inflatable rubber tanks and wooden airplanes to fool German reconnaissance flights. The ruse worked perfectly. German command concentrated their armored divisions at Pas-de-Calais, the narrowest point across the Channel. But the real 156,000-man invasion force quietly curved far west, aiming for a stretch of sand known as Normandy. The master plan was flawless on paper, but as 5,000 ships moved across the dark water, the brilliant strategy was about to slam into the chaotic reality of war. Approaching midnight on June 6th, the sky over France filled with the hum of aircraft. Thousands of American and British paratroopers prepared to jump into total darkness to secure key bridges and roads behind enemy lines. Instantly, the perfection of the plan evaporated. Gale force winds violently threw the transport planes off course, dropping men miles from their intended targets. The result was a logistical nightmare. Soldiers landed alone in flooded fields. Officers couldn't find their squads. Entire units landed directly onto heavily armed German garrisons. Yet this catastrophic failure produced an effect the planners never could have engineered. Small bands of lost, desperate soldiers started shooting at everything they saw. Reports of gunfire erupted from every direction at once. The German command structure completely froze, unable to decipher where the actual front line was. At 6:30 a.m., the first waves of landing craft approached the 5 designated beaches: Utah, Gold, Juno, Sword, and Omaha. At Omaha, the massive naval bombardment had almost entirely missed its targets. The German defenses were fully intact. As the metal ramps dropped into the surf, American soldiers stepped out of their boats and into a wall of lead. Machine gun fire ripped through the water. Mortar shells shattered the landing craft before they even touched the sand. Those who survived the initial barrage threw themselves into the water, only to be dragged under by 90 pounds of soaking wet equipment. Minutes into the assault, the water was turning red. The most meticulously coordinated military operation in history was on the razor's edge of total collapse. Penned down behind massive metal obstacles, the surviving soldiers realized no rescue was coming. The grand strategy had failed them. Slowly, small clusters of survivors stopped waiting for orders. They gathered whatever weapons they had left and began crawling forward, yard by agonizing yard, up the steep cliffs. They cleared the heavily fortified pillboxes the only way possible, up close. Using flamethrowers, hand grenades, and raw determination, they silenced the German guns one by one. 2 years of perfect planning didn't ultimately secure Omaha Beach. That bloody stretch of sand was bought by the sheer refusal of individual, broken men to lie down and die. By midday, the American forces crested the cliffs, and by nightfall on June 6th, the Allies had successfully established a foothold for 150,000 troops. The price of that real estate was enormous. Over 4,000 Allied soldiers were killed on D-Day, with thousands more maimed. But the door had been kicked open. Millions of Allied forces poured through the Normandy breach, rolling through the countryside to liberate Paris. The German army was pushed back relentlessly, culminating in the complete surrender of the Nazi regime less than 11 months later. Operation Overlord reached the shore through a masterpiece of deception and logistics, but the beach was taken by the individual soldiers who stepped into the chaos, crawled up the cliffs, and changed history forever.